Well, good morning, everyone. One of my favourite books as a kid was Matilda by Roald Dahl. In the book, Matilda's dad, Mr. Wormwood, is a dodgy used car salesman. He takes old wrecked cars, winds the mileage back, polishes the outside to look good on the showroom floor, but inside they're rusted, broken, and they break down the road. Wormwood himself dresses to impress in snazzy suits, but he lives in constant fear of being discovered by the authorities. Now the reality is, we can become spiritual wormwoods, polished on the outside, fit for the showroom, but broken on the inside, ready to break down, living in fear of being discovered. Today we're thinking about spiritual hypocrisy, how we can put on a show at church to fool others that we are clean and perfect, and yet leave week after week unchanged, our lives filled with dirt, guilt, and brokenness. As always, the Bible has real hope and answers for us today. I have been so challenged by this passage. I can't wait to show you. We're back in Matthew's eyewitness account of the life of Jesus. Jesus' fame has been spreading everywhere after repeatedly proving himself to be God in flesh, walking on water, raising the dead, not standard activities for your small town carpenter. And at the start of chapter 15, verse 1, some hotshot religious leaders called Pharisees come from the capital to meet Jesus. Now, we met the Pharisees before. These guys looked outwardly very impressive. They wore, for example, religious robes. They strapped boxes called phylacteries to their foreheads and arms containing scripture. They devoted their lives to holy living. They spoke to crowds. By age 18, they memorized the entire Old Testament. For context, a Shakespearean lead actor might memorize 4,000 or 5,000 words. The Old Testament is 620,000 words. So that's close to learning every role to every Shakespeare play ever written. The Pharisees looked outwardly very impressive. And these Pharisees come to meet Jesus, and it all kicks off when Jesus' disciples fail to wash their hands before eating. Imagine a world where people fell out over hand washing regulations. Yes, we'll have to use our imaginations. But right here, it has nothing to do with hygiene. See, the Pharisees weren't germaphobes worried about getting tummy bugs. This was about keeping tradition. Verse 2, why do your disciples break the tradition of the elders? They don't wash their hands before they eat. You see, the Pharisees had made a tradition of extensive hand washing before meals. I'm sure it started from a good place. The Old Testament said if anyone touched a dead body or certain fluids, that they should cleanse themselves before going to temple worship. The big idea was, well, you need to be cleansed before approaching a holy God. The whole thing set the stage for Jesus dying for sin and cleansing us so that we could approach God. But the Pharisees made it a competition, a chance to display quite how clean and holy they could be. So they didn't just wash before temple, no, they washed before meals. Some between courses. And not just their hands, but their arms too. And they decided just how much water was needed and how many times you had to pour it. And the direction it had to drip off. Special words you had to say. Make a single mistake, you had to start over. And the trouble with this is it became tradition. God never asked for these things in the Bible, but after one generation it became tradition. You ask people, well, why do we do this thing? Well, because we've always done it this way. Well, why? Because it's tradition. People still, 2,000 years later, do this ritualistic hand washing today. I watched a 5-minute instructional video on YouTube, which was about as fun as it sounded. Now look, not all tradition is bad. We all have family traditions, cultural traditions. In my family, every Christmas Eve, we dress up and do a treasure hunt. That started when we were kids. We're now all grown up, sat around in costumes. It's pretty embarrassing. At first, my wife Sarah didn't know what she'd married into, but then she won her first treasure hunt and now she loves it. But the point is, it's harmless fun, harmless tradition. The trouble when tradition revolves around God is it quickly takes on an added weight of authority. The tradition becomes equally as authoritative as God's word. And that's a problem. Firstly, because it actually adds to or distorts God's word and how God wants to be worshipped. Well, you have to worship God in an old church building. You have to cross your body when you walk in. You have to touch holy water. You have to light a candle for dead relatives. You have to have synth keyboard playing whilst people speak. You have to speak in tongues. You have to break communion bread just the right way. You have to dress a certain way. You have to say certain prayers before meals. No, it's not in the Bible. And the second problem is, people then start to rely on these traditions for their salvation. Well, I wear a cross necklace, therefore I'm saved. Well, I do morning devotionals, therefore I'm saved. These Pharisees come to Jesus, they're literally sat with God and they tell him that he's not washing his hands right. Jesus, you and your people, you're never going to get to heaven without our traditions. Oh boy, they didn't see this coming. Check out Jesus' response in verse 3. Jesus replied, "And why do you break the command of God for the sake of your tradition? For God said, 'Honor your father and mother,' and anyone who curses their father or mother is to be put to death. But you say that if anyone declares that what might have been used to help their father or mother is devoted to God, well, they're not to honour their father or mother with it. Thus you nullify the word of God for the sake of your tradition. You hypocrites." Wow, you hypocrites. That dinner party just got a little bit awkward. Now, this is the first time that Jesus calls out the Pharisees as hypocrites. It comes from the Greek word for actor. He tells them that they're only acting godly for the crowd, whilst inwardly they're anything but. He effectively says here, advanced hand-washing guys, seriously? You might fool others, but you can't fool God. He then takes just one example to make a mockery of their outward wormwood religion. He says, take parents, for example. God's law says to honour your father and mother. One obvious way we might do that in their old age is to care for them. Many in our church family have done this, are doing this, or will do this. It's not glamorous. It doesn't win you many spiritual points on a Sunday. And back in the first century, parents might well come to their Pharisee sons and say they needed care, money, a bed. Of course, that would seriously impact their ministry and time. But obviously it would be ungodly to say, get out of here, I don't want to help you. So they invented a way out called korban. Jesus describes it in verse 5, where you basically say your stuff is devoted to God for a time. Mom, Dad, I'd love to help, but my spare room is korban right now. My money is devoted to God right now. And here's the catch, you could make it unkorban anytime you liked. It was a spiritual scam to get out of following God's law while still looking pious and godly to outsiders. It was blatant hypocrisy, and Jesus calls it out here. You might fool others, but you can't fool God. Well, why? Because God sees your heart. Think about it. Right now, where you're sitting, God sees your heart. He isn't fooled by your outward displays, by words you use. God sees your inmost being, your greatest desires, who you truly are. That's frightening. You can't fool him. So imagine the person who goes to church every Sunday, gets confirmed, sings in the choir, reads at the front, crosses themselves on the way in and out, cross necklace. Maybe they even pass these traditions on to their kids. But outside church, they live in no way recognizable as a Christian. They don't love Jesus. They cheat their taxes, slander their neighbors. They never pray. God isn't fooled by that. Really, think about it. This kind of religion is based on the assumption that God is an idiot, that you can easily fool him, like he's somehow blinded by our wonderful religious displays to who we truly are. And in verse 8, Jesus quotes Isaiah saying, "These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They worship me in vain. Their teachings are merely human rules." Wow. Isaiah says that religion that tries to dress right, look right, sound right, but doesn't penetrate the heart, it's vain, useless, it's a pointless waste of time. It might seem appealing to us to look holy to other people, but if ultimately inside we still have the same rotten, corrupt heart, what's the point? This kind of religion is like a shiny apple that when bitten into is rotten and filled with maggots, like a sparkly milk bottle that pours out lumpy green sludge. We're better off without it because it's so bad for us. I mean, there's no joy in hypocrisy, just fear, guilt, fake smiles. It never leads to peace, hope, or real change. We're just like Mr. Wormwood dressing up for the showroom, but terrified someone might see what's back in the workshop. But it's also terrible for those around us. For example, one guaranteed way for parents to mess up their kids is to bring them up with legalistic, external religion where performance is more important than reality. Where we fake faith at church, but show that it has no importance at home. And the fake faith of the Pharisees spreads from generation to generation, culture to culture, from leaders to people. And Jesus says in a moment, it's the blind leading the blind into a pit. But hypocritical religion isn't just bad for us and others, it's also incredibly toxic to God. To come before our Heavenly Father and pretend to be something we're not is so damaging to that relationship. In human terms, most parents can handle when their kid messes up, but when the kid lies about it and pretends to be innocent, that's way more complicated. Or imagine a friendship or relationship. Hurting the other person is one thing, but when someone refuses to say sorry, pretends to have no dirt on their hands, that's an intensely broken relationship. And it's the same with us and God. The Bible tells us God is a good Father, merciful, gracious, slow to anger, abounding in steadfast love, the kind of Father when the broken prodigal son comes home after all his mistakes, the Father throws his arms around him, hugs him, kisses him. But it is extremely dangerous as a position to face a holy God, the consuming fire, and pretend to be pure and holy when you're not. To rely on hand washing, traditions, when your heart is so far from him. You might fool others, but you can't fool God. And I wonder what Jesus would say to some of us at Danbury Mission or City Church Chelmsford about how we act publicly and then who we are privately. What inconsistencies he might find. Now this needs to be carefully clarified because people miss this. It isn't hypocrisy when we sin and make mistakes. That is all of us. Every Christian desires to live God's way but then falls short. Hypocrites are those who aren't honest about the gap between their talk and their walk. So being a failure doesn't make you a hypocrite. It's hiding your failure that makes you a hypocrite. It's trying to pull the speck from your brother's eye without acknowledging the planks in your own. It's the home group leader who loves to counsel others but never accepts counsel themselves. It's the preacher who exhorts others to do things he has no intention of ever doing himself. It's the theology nerd who loves to condemn other churches for their wrong theology, but has no personal love for the Lord. It's the person who scolds the sexual ethics of our society whilst being quietly addicted to pornography. It's the person who grumbles that the church has no love whilst doing nothing to go and love others in the church. It's the parent who shouts at their kid to concentrate in prayer, but never concentrates themselves. It's the young professional who has all sorts of faith on their tongue, but only the world in their heart. It's the person who genuinely isn't themselves on Sunday. And if that's you, Jesus wants you to know that you are playing a dangerous game. Because you might fool others. You might even fool the pastor, your home group, your spouse. You might even fool yourself, but you can't fool God. I don't know about you, but I don't want another Sunday of just going through the motions of church and never getting real with God and seeing my life changed. So I've got a very simple question for us to answer in our heads. What are we hiding this morning? What are you hiding this morning? Now, if that's the problem, let's look at the solution. Look down with me at verse 10. Jesus called the crowd to him and said, "Listen and understand. What goes into someone's mouth does not defile them, but what comes out of their mouth, that is what defiles them." Then the disciples came to him and asked, "Do you know that the Pharisees were offended when they heard this?" I love that response. It feels like such a modern response from the disciples, worried Jesus might offend someone. Jesus, you probably shouldn't say this stuff about hypocrisy. You might offend someone. But Jesus here wasn't interested in telling the Pharisees that, hey, however you want to personally practice your religion, that's fine. You can do your hand washing thing, that's cool, because that's just you being you. At the end of the day, there are times when remaining silent because you don't want to offend someone is the least loving thing to do. Sometimes people are in so much danger that the truth might offend them, but it is the thing they need most in the world. Jesus is so clear here. Verse 10, he draws the whole crowd to tune in and he says, "Listen and understand. Human beings are not defiled before God because of what's on the outside, but what's on the inside." And he then gets 10 times more offensive and says, that kind of religion that just focuses on the outside is destined for judgment. Verse 13, it's like a plant pulled up by the roots. It's like verse 14, it's like the blind leading the blind into a pit, leading others with them. Let me be very clear what Jesus is saying here. You might think that having a bit of religion in your life, singing some songs, going to church, it's harmless tradition. You don't need to have a heart one for Jesus. But Jesus says that will lead you to hell. It'll actually lead you away from God. That is a frightening and offensive thought. You can go to church, follow the traditions, even be a church leader, and still end up in hell because you never actually knew Jesus. At which point Peter comes forward with this furrowed brow and says, verse 15, "Explain this strange parable to us." And so Jesus, probably rolling his eyes, spells things out more literally and biologically for us. Verse 16, "Are you still so dull?" Jesus asked them. "Don't you see that whatever enters the mouth goes into the stomach and then out the body? But the things that come out of a person's mouth come from the heart. These defile them. For out of the heart come evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false testimony, slander. These are what defile a person. But eating with unwashed hands does not defile them. This is so important. Jesus exposes, and we've said this before, that the heart of the human problem is the problem of the human heart. When it comes to our relationship with God, dirty food, dirty house, dirty hands aren't the problem. It's a dirty heart. It's such a bigger problem than we first thought. And Jesus speaks to the whole crowd and he says, you want to be right with God? Your heart is the problem. Verse 19, out of the heart come evil thoughts. You ever had any of those? Murder, adultery, sexual immorality. Ever had a raunchy thought about someone that wasn't your spouse? Theft. Ever taken something that wasn't yours? False testimony. Have you ever told a lie? Slander. You ever said something mean about someone else? These are the things that defile us before God. That list just pulls me up. The thought that I could somehow trick God to let someone like me with such a dirty, filthy heart into heaven because I got a Christian bumper sticker is madness. My very nature is corrupt. We shouldn't be coming to Jesus asking, what's the right way to wash our hands? We should be falling at his feet crying, what can I do to be saved? How can I clean my heart? How can I do it? Possibly one of the most terrifying plays Shakespeare ever wrote was Macbeth. Not because of the supposed bad luck that haunts the actors or the multiple murders it contains, but because it shows once you're guilty of something, that guilt is seemingly impossible to get rid of. After Lady Macbeth conducts a murder, she keeps trying to wash her hands clean to remove her guilt. But it doesn't work. And she realizes to her horror, there's nothing she can do to make herself clean. And one day she'll have to stand before God to give an account of her life. And the very thought of that day fills her with dread. How can she ever be clean from sin? And at one point towards the end, her therapist says, more needs she the divine than a physician. No doctor can cure guilt. And this is the reason that the Christian gospel is the greatest news anybody can ever hear. You see, it isn't man attempting to fix himself for God. It is God reaching down to fix man. One of the most remarkable passages in the Old Testament, Ezekiel 36, I love it. God talks about a future day saying, in that day, I will sprinkle clean water on you and you will be clean. I will cleanse you from your impurities. I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh and put my spirit in you. I will be your God and I will save you from all your uncleanness. You see, the whole Old Testament promise of God is he would cleanse his people from sin by giving them a new heart, a heart that longed for him. And all those Old Testament rituals and traditions, which were only ever a glimpse of this day, would be done away with, totally consumed by the glory of what it was that was coming. And what was it? What possible fountain did God send to cleanse our wretched, sinful hearts? It was himself. He sent himself. He came like an innocent lamb led to the slaughter to be brutally killed, to pay for all the awful sins I've committed, to cleanse me from them. And the old songwriter William Cooper explained this cleansing like this. He said, imagine there is a fountain filled with blood drawn from Emmanuel's veins, and sinners plunged beneath that flood lose all their guilty stains. He continues, the dying thief rejoiced to see that fountain in his day, and there have I, though vile as he, washed all my sins away. Washed all my sins away. You see, the Pharisees tried to fool Jesus by washing their hands. They should have fallen before Jesus to wash their souls. A true Christian must hate hypocrisy. A true believer hates to pretend to be what they are not, because we know it's only in humble faith that we take hold of the salvation of God. As Billy Graham once closed, let us ask God to reveal hypocrisy in our life, any inconsistency between what we profess and what we practice, and then ask God to bring us so close to Christ that we won't have any desire to live an inconsistent, deceitful life. Let's pray together now. Oh, Father, please destroy all the deadly hypocrisy that is in us. May we boast today all the more gladly about our weakness, that Christ's power may rest on us. Father, thank you for your word to us today. May we never be the same. In Jesus' name, amen.